Welcome to this week's installment of Today and Tomorrow in Scottsdale with Don Henniger. I'm Don, and with me is my podcast partner and communications expert extraordinary, Kevin Maxwell.
Hey, Don, how are you?
Kevin, you're the best, man. Good to see you
buddy.
again.
Good to see you, man.
We got a good one, another good one coming up.
I've been trying to get Holly on the show for a while.
You got her.
Yep.
You know, I'm glad you persevered, man. So it's working. With us is Holly Walter. She's Public Affairs Supervisor for the City of Scottsdale. It's a job you've had now for going on 5 years. Mm-hmm. Welcome, Holly.
Thank you. Thanks for having me on the show.
Absolutely. No, so you've actually been with the city for almost 12 years, though, right?
Correct.
You were public information officer before your current role. And before that, you spent 8 years at Southwest Ambulance. That's kind of cool, doing communications work. And you also worked for the city of Mesa for about 8 years before that in similar roles. So you have been around the communications block a little bit, haven't you?
I have.
Yeah.
You have a degree in communications?
I have a degree in journalism from Arizona State University and a master's degree from NAU. In counseling.
I love that. Now, I have a journalism background, too, and did some teaching at Cronkite for, I wonder if she was in my, when did you graduate?
It was a great school in 97.
Oh, no, I was teaching in the early 90s. There was just some copy editing class. I missed you a little bit.
Oh, I just missed you.
Darn. I had so close.
Yeah. You know, Don was the editor of the Business Journal. Did you know that?
Do know that.
Yeah, publisher of the Business Journal.
Publisher.
Yeah, I was editor for a while. It was more fun being editor.
I always
imagine.
I shortchanged you, and I shortchanged Holly when I said she was PIO, because you actually used to do that role, right? Or
I started with the city as a public information officer, and I did focus on internal communication, and I also served as the primary spokesperson for the transportation department.
That makes sense, yeah. So let's back up a little bit. So you got your degree from Cronkite at ASU. Where did you grow up? Did you grow up in Phoenix, in Arizona?
I'm an Arizona native.
All right, good.
Yeah, I'm an Arizona girl.
Where'd you grow up?
I grew up in Phoenix. I was actually born at Doctors Hospital, which is now Phoenix Children's Hospital, but it was called
How about that?
Doctors Hospital back in the day.
I forgot about that, yeah.
Grew up in Phoenix. When I was in high school, I moved to Mesa. So I graduated from high school in Mesa, Westwood Warriors.
Yeah, sure, Westwood.
But I've stayed in the Valley. I went to ASU and then later to NAU. And I love Arizona. I love everything about it and haven't found a reason to leave.
I don't think there is a reason to leave. You know why there's not a good reason to leave? Because we keep running into good people like you. Yeah. Doing wonderful work here. That's no reason to leave Scottsdale, that's for sure, right? Yeah. So tell us a little bit about what you do as public affairs supervisor. Give us an overview of your role and what your job's all about.
Sure. Well, quick overview of the position is that I'm responsible for managing the city's communication and public relation activities. I have a team of 3 who work directly with me in my office. So I have a part-time public information officer. I have 2 public affairs specialists. And of course, the city has other communicators embedded throughout the city. So we have others who focus on water. We have a person in transportation. We have a representative in the fire department. And of course, we have officers who serve as the police department spokespeople. But we work with that entire team citywide, as well as our video folks, our Scottsdale Video Network, to communicate with the public. And we do that in a lot of ways. Media relations, of course. So we work closely with the media to maintain those relationships and coordinate press releases and press conferences and to make sure that they're up to speed with our activities.
So when you look at your team, if you look at all the people doing communications work in the city, it's a big team. I think of Kelly Corsett. We've known him for a while, too. Do you work with him, or who do you report to?
I do. I report to Kelly Corsett.
To Kelly, okay.
And Kelly also oversees our diversity director, and he oversees our community involvement group.
Yeah. So when you look at the communications team that the combined city has, that's quite a small little army right there, isn't it?
It is. We're small but mighty.
You are mighty. So how do you stay together? How do you speak if it's possible? I know you're all different departments, but somehow you're all speaking with one voice as Scottsdale.
Sure.
How does that all come together?
Well, a big project we've worked on over the last several years is some rebranding and really, getting us all on the same page, sharing that same story, making sure that message aligns with what everyone else is sharing. So that's a big project that has come to a wrap, but we meet regularly. We meet weekly. Yeah. Every Monday, usually, we'll have a quick wrap up to share, hey, what's coming for the week? What are some council topics we need to keep on our radar? What are any community involvement initiatives that we're working on? What news releases are going out? What are we doing on social? So we really roundtable regularly.
So many different platforms in the communications world these days, a million different ways to getting the message out. And I know you're active in a whole bunch of them, right?
We are, and that that's one thing that has really changed since I started years ago. But, we really are in the digital age now. Yep. So this podcast is a good example of that. But of course, we have online presence on most social media platforms. We're on LinkedIn. We're on Nextdoor, Facebook, Instagram, X.
X. I keep saying X. I keep
I was about to say Twitter,
X.
but yeah, X.
I keep stumbling over X.
Formerly known as Twitter.
Yeah, the group formerly known as.
That's right.
Yeah. Kevin, you're a social media guru. How much news do you stay in touch with Scottsdale using a social platform, right?
A lot. Yeah. I don't know if you saw yesterday, I noticed that the Arizona Republic did a cool little photo essay on the life in the 90s in Phoenix and Scottsdale, and they mislabeled one of their images, so I had to bring it to attention.
I think I saw that posted. Yeah, you corrected it.
It was the airport. Yeah, it was the airport. They mislabeled one of the airport images, so I had to bring that to their attention. But I tagged, of course, the airport. And
I think that's why I saw it.
I did see that too.
Kelly's up there now. I'm not. Yeah, right. Because she was.
Kelly Keister.
That's right.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, that's right. Sure. Yeah.
I was hoping she'd see that. Anyway, hey, I have a question for you. Okay, so here is when I see a news incident where there's police or fire involved and the spokesperson's on there. Now they're wearing uniforms. Are they mostly communications people who are also uniformed peace officers, or did you train them, or are they officers who kind of do a communications have a communication skill?
Different departments do it different ways. In Scottsdale, our spokespeople are sworn police officers.
Okay.
But interesting point with my background is my first job in government was with the Mesa Police Department. So, but I was a civilian. I'm not a sworn police officer, obviously, but I worked alongside sworn police officers. And usually they're officers who have an interest in working in that area, and they'll oftentimes go to training. And they have the expertise, of course, as an officer. So it's a good combination, and it worked really well. And it was kind of funny because I never thought that a journalism background would take me into a job in law enforcement. But there I was, and I really loved it.
Yeah, that's a skill, right? I mean, we all know that, the communication skills, but it seems like everybody I see does a really good job of communicating the issues and does it in a really professional manner.
They do a great job. And I have to say, working in law enforcement, that's a tough job. So really, for me, I would struggle with that sometimes with the things I would see and the calls I had to respond to. And it was a little, I guess my skin wasn't quite as thick. But, so I really tip my hat to those who do that job, because it's a lot of work, and it's, it can take an emotional toll on you too.
Journalists learn quickly.
Yeah, I bet. Do they?
Because when you're in journalism, you could be interviewing people from far different careers and backgrounds. And what we get trained as journalists is to listen, ask questions, and listen and learn, and then report back from what you hear.
Right.
And I could tell you've done that through your whole career.
Yes, I have. And, I love it because I feel like you don't really, you rely on those subject matter experts, really. You don't really become an expert in any one thing, but you know a lot about a lot of different things.
Just enough to be dangerous across the surface.
Exactly. But it's a lot of fun.
So of all the social media platforms that are out there, which ones do you find to be the most effective for you getting the word out about city issues?
We get a lot of success through Nextdoor platform, because we have found that those residents who subscribe through Nextdoor are typically a bit more engaged than other followers on other platforms. But we really increased our Instagram following too. That's become very, very big. So we're looking into, the new things within that platform, putting out more reels and short form videos. And, today really one of the biggest challenges in this line of work is keeping people's attention and competing with all the other messages that are out there.
So Nextdoor can be really, really good or really, really bad.
That is true.
Depending on what the issue and the policy and the topics are. And politics can just be crazy bad in there. So what do you do in this age of dis and misinformation that's prevalent on all walks of life, basically, from local governments to all the way up to the feds? What do you do when you see mis and disinformation? How are you reacting to that? And is there a way now that you're making that part of your strategy?
Definitely is. We aim to be a transparent organization and, of course, remain very factual and correct mistakes when we see those out there, but in a polite manner. But it is true. It does pose challenges. We have to be prepared to respond promptly because things can get out there in an instance. And, there's a lot of noise, as we've said, to filter through sometimes in that messaging. So it's a constant influx of information that we're watching and that our citizens and visitors are looking at as well.
Kevin, that's one of the biggest problems we have on all levels of society right now, and it's become a political hot button right now too. In this election season, particularly as we wind down in all levels of office holders that are going to be on the ballot this November. That's one of the things we're paying a lot of attention to.
Yeah, absolutely. So you guys do engage then when you see disinformation out there?
We do. It depends on the topic and what was stated, but if something's incorrect, we will get on there and share the correct information.
Can you? I know you, Holly, so I know you're going to be very guarded on this, but can you give us an example or?
Oh, gosh. I think, something that was very divisive, of course, was COVID-19.
Yeah, sure,
and a lot of the city policies, we had to continue to operate, of course. We had a lot of closures. We had to change a lot of the ways we were doing programming, and not everyone was happy with what we were doing. We had a lot of people who were very appreciative of what we were doing, but not everyone agreed, sometimes with information or with policies that we were putting out at that time. So when we'd see any example of misinformation, we'd be sure to correct it. It was important to do that.
Sometimes even misinformation from certain city council members back in the COVID era. Yeah. Right? That's a little bit more delicate, isn't it?
Well, the digital age, of course, it's, as I said, it's an advantage because we can quickly get out information. But again, the disadvantage is you can quickly spread disinformation too, the misinformation.
Got to walk a little fine line, though, when you're talking about somebody who's potentially your boss, if you're on city council and you're saying things that are wrong, you just politely kind of correct them with the right facts, correct?
Right.
Yeah. Delicate little balancing job in there that communications experts like you get to deal with all the time, probably.
Right. Part of our role is to advise.
Yeah,
and, let the people that we work with understand the importance of the message that we're putting out there and the ways that we can do it.
So you're always looking for feedback. I know that. So you have a program called Speak Up Scottsdale, which you launched a couple months ago, I think, right?
It's an online platform where we are posting discussion questions, interactive polls. Yes, but another tool that we are using to obtain feedback from our residents on a variety of issues. Right now, I think we are asking questions about potential changes to our short-term rental ordinance and what folks think about that. And overwhelmingly right now, they're in favor of a lot of the changes that we're proposing.
Are people reacting to that pretty well to the point where you can then start compiling the feedback you're getting and then sharing it with people like on the city council? And how does that work?
Yes, that's what we do. We take that information. We really try within the organization to make data-driven decisions, and it helps to have that tool. We have others as well. We have another tool called Polko, where we put out survey information for resident feedback, and we take that information as well. I
think I've got 2 surveys in my inbox right now, actually, from that.
Yeah.
I don't remember. I haven't taken any yet, so I don't remember what they are, but there's 2 sitting in my inbox waiting for my attention. So you're doing a lot of those, aren't you?
We are. And actually, we like to use the word feedback, actually, rather than survey, but we do seek feedback through those tools and through, of course, our social media channels. We're monitoring Nextdoor. We put out information weekly in a email blast we call Scottsdale Update. We send out information in our utility bill inserts. So we realize not everyone is on social media, so we try to spread the information as widely as possible in many ways we can.
Do you work with Channel 11 much in terms of some of the broadcasting opportunities?
We do. We work very closely with Scottsdale Video Network, which we call them SVN now because they also air a lot of their content on YouTube and they live stream content. So you don't have to be previously you had to be a Cox Cable subscriber. Now you don't. You can watch any of their content by going to YouTube. You can watch it live, going to scottsdaleaz.gov. So in real time, you can watch city council meetings and most of our boards and commission meetings. Mm-hmm.
She's doing so well. It's obvious she's been on a podcast before.
Yeah. Oh, let's talk about it.
Yeah, you've got your own podcast, right?
We do. Yeah. We have a podcast. Thank you. It's called Podsdale.
Podsdale.
And it's about the people and things happening in Scottsdale, just really sharing those stories that make Scottsdale special. And it's funny because initially when we talk about cutting through the clutter and communicating, our initial thought when we launched that podcast was that it was going to focus on our employee population and communicating to those employees who work out in the field or who aren't always at a desk to read our weekly employee newsletter. But of course, once we put it out on different platforms, we found that there were other people listening too. So we decided to retool it a little bit, and now we have it out there for everyone, and it's a little more general. Here's what your city is doing. Here's how you can get involved. Here are the partners we're working with.
Let's talk about newspapers for a second.
Okay.
Gosh, I wish we could talk about it in a different light, but the challenges newspapers are having these days is really disturbing to somebody like me that's been in the newspaper business for 35 years. Mm-hmm. But it's really disturbing, I think, to our democracy and the coverage of local governments like Scottsdale. So we've got basically two papers here, the Independent and the Progress.
Correct.
Do you develop relationships with them? Or how closely do you work with them? And thank goodness we have at least two that are still covering the city, right?
Right. And the Arizona Republic on a different level, but we do work quite a bit with the Arizona Republic as well. But yes, we actually hear from our print journalists quite often, and they keep us busy. So, it's a great relationship, and we're glad to have them sharing that information and covering important topics that matter to people who live in Scottsdale.
That's been the problem we've had with local governments everywhere, Kevin, is just the lack of local newspapers now, as they dry up and become financially challenged. And
we're kind of actually fortunate, really. Yeah, a couple good ones.
I think we really do. We've got two at least that are covering. They show up, they're both there usually at every city council meeting and most our school board meetings. Yeah. And so thank goodness for that.
Yeah, my career began after college at the Arizona Republic. So I was a writer for a few years, but I remember back then when the Arizona Republic would have community sections.
Yeah.
What years were you at the Republic?
That was 98 to 2000.
Just after I left.
Yeah.
I just keep missing you.
I know. Every time we've had a chance, we just keep missing. I actually was part of the team that created the community sections back in the day.
Oh, great.
That actually came out of the old Phoenix Gazette, just to get nostalgic for a second, the old afternoon newspaper that was there. But frankly, when I look at the community sections now, I'm a little disappointed in terms of what they cover and what they don't cover.
I bet, right?
There's not much in there. A few ads to keep things going. So talk about some of the other community groups that you work with. I'm thinking about Blue Zones, for example, a big initiative in Scottsdale now and just getting off the ground. We've had Sarah Kearney in here talking about how she's getting things rolling, and that's kind of an exciting time for Scottsdale. Are you doing things to support what they're doing?
Oh, absolutely. And in fact, we had Sarah on our podcast as well, but that has been a really exciting partnership for the city of Scottsdale. And really, when you look at our population, it makes sense. And we're putting out so many programs that tie right into what Blue Zones is all about. And in fact, Blue Zones is hosting an activity later this month to tie into our Earth Week event. So we do a lot of back and forth. I know they did some community food sorting and packing at the food bank. And so they've been a great partnership.
What would you say is your biggest challenge when you go to work every day? Maybe not every day, but what's your biggest challenge as you look ahead, and you think about where the city's going and what your job is and how you can affect that? What do you consider your biggest challenge or opportunity ahead?
That's a really good question. I think our opportunity, I would look at it more as an opportunity to just evolve as the city evolves and continue to communicate to our residents and hear what their needs are. I know we're underway with launching a new city website soon. So right now, that's another question we've put out to residents to give us feedback on the look and the feel and the content. So we're always changing, but it's part of what I love about my job. So I look at it more as an opportunity than a challenge.
Challenge in communications these days, no matter who you're working for, is a challenge.
Yeah,
just keeping up with technology, right? Yeah.
Yes.
And the website, I hadn't thought about your website, but they always need refreshed, and updating as you go forward. So that's important too.
Sure. Yeah, it's important that it's accessible to everyone. So it's ADA compliant, that it's easy for folks to find information.
I use the city website all the time.
Yeah.
And I think it's really easy to navigate. There's a ton of information on there.
Once you get in there and start getting around with it, it's not bad at all.
Right.
You got to get in and use it like anything. You got to use it and see where you're going with what you need in there. But yeah, it's loaded with the stuff, that's for sure. We haven't talked too much about crisis communications. I guess there's like little crises all the time, whether it's a police department issue or a fire department thing or whatever. But from your standpoint, do you have a crisis communication game plan that's sort of on the shelf for when you might need to respond to something?
We do. We run through emergency exercises every so often and not really activate, but pretend like we activate our emergency operations center. We've run through various scenarios which have turned out to really help us. For example, when we had the wildfire last summer, right. That crept very close to the city. There were some closures that were taking place, and it was a lot of information that we had to get out very quickly to keep people safe. And we were ready. It was great. We have some emergency templates for most scenarios, of course, flooding, for fires, for the monsoon season. That's another time of year where we're putting out a lot of information quickly to residents because those storms can come upon us without a lot of notice sometimes. But we do have some emergency templates in place, and we look to refresh those on a regular basis.
We had flooding this week with the rains, right?
Yeah, we did. How about back when we had the Fashion Square Mall incident a couple of years ago? How long has that been now? It's been 2 or 3 years?
I think it was before COVID, wasn't it?
It was during COVID, wasn't it?
I think that was during COVID.
Yeah. During COVID?
Yeah.
Was that? I bet that was a challenging time for you.
It was just very sad to see.
Yeah, right.
And I know that our Old Town marketing manager, she was really emotional seeing some of the damage to the storefronts. And these are merchants she works with daily. So to see what happened there was very sad. But I feel like our police department did an amazing job with investigating, with calming that scene. And who would have thought something like that would happen?
Right, yeah. And they're making arrests. They made some arrests recently, actually, stemming from that.
They're still working it. Yeah. And so with success, right. Yeah, it's pretty amazing when you see how they're doing that for sure.
Yeah, they did a great job.
What a wonderful, another example, Kevin. We get them all the time. Our public servants doing just terrific work for our city and making things happen the right way. It's really
Didn't I
cool.
remember we had our 100th anniversary last year, and I talked about how many people from the city. Mm-hmm. At that time, it was like over a third of our guests have been city staff or related to the city somehow.
I think so. And we're there's still many more to come.
Oh yeah, I mean we got to get Kelly on here.
We have a new economic development director now that's on board.
That's
She's pretty
right.
new director of Westworld out there. She's
Absolutely.
still pretty new.
Mm-hmm.
We've had somebody return to run human services here. Kara came back. We've had her on before with a different role, but she's back. So we have we're just going to have to keep doing this for years and years.
Yeah.
We're never going to run out.
Endless content. Endless content.
Which from a journalist standpoint, you always want to have some content out. The content is king, right?
And
right.
we're really careful, Don, aren't we, when we get our guests, because we could simply line up a bunch of city staffers and have it, but that's what Holly's show is about. So we don't want to duplicate what they're doing, but we want to compliment each other, right?
Yeah, exactly right. Yeah. Well, it's people in our view who are doing such outstanding work. We think the city needs to know them. We want to say thank you to them.
Yeah.
And this is our way of saying thank you, getting to know a little bit more about what they do, so people can kind of connect a little bit better and have a better understanding of how our city works and why it's the special place that it is. Because that's what we also think is we're all about positive things in Scottsdale. There's enough negatives out there. They can do their own thing, but the people come to Scottsdale, they stay in Scottsdale, and they love living in Scottsdale.
That's true.
That's what it's all about.
Do you guys do any tourism communication or around the tourism season?
Oh, of course. We have someone who is dedicated to that in our tourism and events department and works a lot of those larger events. I know right now we're doing a pop-up that coincides with the men's Final Four. So that should be a lot of fun and have some public art out there. We had just had our Easter event, Bonanza. Out at Civic Center.
Yeah, sure.
This time of year, the weather is so beautiful. We really ramp up the events.
I love it. I see the Civic Center just got some kind of big award too, didn't it?
It did. We just were recognized by Arizona Forward with a Criscordia Award for the innovative design of the Civic Center and the water-saving features and sustainability features incorporated into the new design there.
Very cool.
That's very cool.
Yeah, it's another example of what makes Scottsdale shine, man.
Yeah.
Yep. Holly, thank you so much for all you do, for being with us today, for taking time out of your own podcast to come do one with us.
Yeah.
Really appreciate that. But hey, folks, listen to her podcast too. It's all about city people that she works with that are doing great things as well. And Holly, you certainly are doing great things for the city. And we sure thank you for being with us today.
Oh, thank you for having me. And thank you for amplifying the city's message.
You bet. And thanks to all of you for listening. We'll see you next time for another episode of Today and Tomorrow in Scottsdale.